Hey everyone. Today we're diving into something you specifically requested,
Oh,
becoming more disciplined.
nice.
You sent us this article called Train Your Brain.
Right.
7 little steps to become a lot more disciplined. So we're ready to unpack these 7 steps.
Yeah,
And a really cool brain hack at the end.
I'm excited to unpack this with you. Discipline is often misunderstood.
Yeah.
It's seen as this rigid,
Yeah.
almost punishing thing. But I think this article has a really refreshing take.
Totally. It feels more like a guide
Yeah.
to leveling up your brain, which
Yeah.
I love. And that first step, setting SMART goals,
Yeah.
really sets the stage for that. It's all about being specific,
Yeah.
measurable, attainable, relevant,
Yeah.
and time-bound. But I'm curious, beyond just the definition, what's the deeper why behind SMART goals?
Well, what's fascinating here is that SMART goals tap into something fundamental about how our brains work.
Okay.
When you set a vague goal, like be healthier,
Right.
it's hard for your brain to latch onto that. It's like giving your GPS coordinates that are all fuzzy. But with a SMART goal, let's say walk for 30 minutes 3 times a week.
Okay.
Your brain has a clear target to aim for. Plus, there's that inherent satisfaction
Yeah.
of checking things off a list.
Right. So it's almost like SMART goals create this internal motivation system.
Yeah.
You mentioned GPS coordinates and the next step. Prioritize and plan
Yes.
feels a bit like reverse engineering a route.
Exactly. You've got your destination in mind, and now you need to map out the steps to get there.
Okay.
So let's say your big goal is to write a book. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by the enormity of it,
Yeah.
you break it down, outline, research, write a chapter a week, then
Yeah.
you prioritize those tasks. What absolutely needs to happen first?
Right.
What can wait?
So it's about figuring out what are those non-negotiables on your quest for discipline. Okay, I'm getting into this quest metaphor.
I love it. And that brings us to step 3, which is all about creating a routine.
Okay.
This is where things get super interesting. From a neuroscience perspective,
You know, I love the brain stuff. What's happening up there? When we establish routines.
think of it like this. Every decision we make,
Okay.
even something as small as choosing what to eat for breakfast, drains a little bit of our mental energy. Routines help us conserve that energy by automating those decisions.
Okay.
Wake up, meditate, have coffee, write for 2 hours. Bam! You're in the flow before your brain even realizes it.
So routines are basically discipline shortcuts. Our brains love efficiency. And I have a feeling that step 4, eliminating distractions, plays a huge role in making those routines run smoothly.
Absolutely. The article specifically calls out our phones, but I think it's bigger than that.
Okay.
It's about identifying anything that pulls you off course.
Yeah.
And then strategically building barriers. Maybe that's turning off notifications, designating a workspace, or even setting specific times to check email.
Yeah.
So you're not constantly being pulled in different directions.
Okay, all this talk about focus and efficiency brings us to step 5, practicing time management. What I love about this article is that it frames time management as a tool for empowerment,
Yeah.
not restriction.
It's about making conscious choices, about how you spend your time, rather than letting it slip away. Time blocking is a really powerful technique. It's literally blocking out chunks of time in your day for specific tasks. It could be 2 hours for focused work, 1 hour for email, 30 minutes for exercise.
It's like creating a visual roadmap for your day. I've tried that before. And it really does help to keep you from getting sidetracked. But let's be honest, sometimes the sidetracks are really tempting. Which brings us to step 6, cultivating self-control.
Yes, and the article's approach to this is really intriguing. It talks about viewing self-control as a series of little experiments.
Right.
Can you resist checking social media for an hour while you're working? Can you skip dessert tonight? It's about playfully testing your limits.
I love that framing. It takes the pressure off of being perfect and turns it into this curiosity about what you're capable of.
Exactly. And each little win strengthens that self-control muscle. And speaking of wins, I think it's the perfect time to bring up the 10 parasites exercise that you mentioned earlier.
Yes, this brain hack is so simple, yet it seems incredibly effective.
What I find fascinating is how it leverages our brain's reward system.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about SMART goals? Giving your brain a clear target. The 10 parasites exercise takes that a step further by tapping into the power of small wins.
So walk me through it. How does it work?
You make a list of 10 tiny tasks you've been putting off,
Okay.
things that take less than 5 minutes to do. It could be changing a light bulb,
Yeah.
unsubscribing from an email list, or even just putting away that stack of laundry, things you know you should do,
Yeah.
but keep pushing aside.
Okay, I have at least 20 things that fit that description right now.
I bet. Now here's the key. As you complete each task, no matter how small, your brain releases a little hit of dopamine. It's a reward signal that makes you feel good.
Okay.
And that reinforces the habit of getting things done.
Right, so by tackling these tiny, almost insignificant tasks, we're actually rewiring our brains for discipline.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You're creating this positive feedback loop. You experience the satisfaction of completing a task, your brain gets that dopamine hit, and it makes you want to keep going. It's like building momentum, one tiny win at a time.
Okay, that's brilliant, and it ties in beautifully with the 7th and final step, stay accountable and seek support. Because even with those little dopamine boosts, we all need encouragement along the way.
Absolutely. Having a support system, whether it's a friend, a mentor, or even an online community, can make a huge difference.
Yeah.
It's about celebrating wins together, offering encouragement when things get tough, and helping each other stay on track.
But the article also emphasizes the importance of being your own cheerleader.
Yeah. Yes. You have to be in your corner, rooting for yourself, even when things get challenging.
Right.
And that brings us back to that idea of self-control as an experiment. It's not about being perfect. It's about being curious, compassionate, and persistent.
This has been such an insightful exploration of the first few steps. I'm already feeling inspired to level up my own discipline game.
Just getting started. There's so much more to uncover as we delve deeper into these steps and how they all connect. You know, as we talk about these steps, what strikes me is that discipline isn't just about willpower or forcing yourself to do things you don't want to do.
I was just thinking the same thing. It feels more like we're building this toolkit for making intentional choices.
Exactly. And I think that's a really empowering way to approach it. It's about understanding your own brain, your own tendencies, and then using that knowledge to create a system that supports your goals.
Okay, so let's connect this back to the 10 parasites exercise. How does tackling those tiny tasks actually translate into building bigger discipline muscles for those more challenging goals?
It's all about momentum. Imagine you're pushing a heavy boulder up a hill.
Okay.
It takes a lot of effort to get it started. But once it's rolling, it becomes easier to keep it moving. The 10 parasites exercise is like giving that boulder a series of small pushes to get it going.
So each little task we check off is like a mini victory that propels us forward?
Precisely. And those mini victories create a sense of accomplishment, which further boosts our motivation and self-belief.
Right.
Remember, our brains love rewards. So by consistently rewarding ourselves for those small wins, we're actually reinforcing the neural pathways associated with discipline.
This is making me think about step 6, cultivating self-control in a whole new light. It's not just about white-knuckling our way through temptation. It's about strategically using those small wins to build momentum and make it easier to resist those bigger temptations down the line.
I love how you're connecting the dots here. It all comes back to that idea of creating a system that works with our brains, not against them.
Right.
For instance, if you're trying to cut back on sugar, instead of focusing on depriving yourself, you could focus on adding in more healthy snacks throughout the day.
So it's almost like hacking the system by giving your brain those little dopamine hits from the healthy snacks. It doesn't crave the sugar as much.
That's a great way to put it. And you could apply that same principle to other areas of your life.
Okay.
If you're trying to focus on work, set yourself up for success by eliminating distractions and creating a dedicated workspace. If you're trying to exercise more, schedule it into your day, like any other important appointment.
Okay, I'm seeing how all of these steps are starting to weave together. It's like each one reinforces the others, creating this web of support for building discipline.
I love that analogy of a web. It's not just a linear process. It's this interconnected system where each element contributes to the overall strength and resilience.
And I think that's where step 7, stay accountable and seek support, becomes so crucial.
Absolutely. Because even with the best systems in place,
Yeah.
we all need that extra boost sometimes. We are social creatures by nature. And having that external support, whether it's a friend, a mentor, a coach, or even an online community, can make all the difference in staying on track, especially when we hit those inevitable bumps in the road.
I think it's also important to acknowledge that seeking support is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength.
I completely agree. It takes courage to admit that we need help, to be vulnerable and open to guidance. And often the simple act of sharing our goals with someone else can increase our commitment and accountability.
And speaking of accountability, I'm curious to get your take on how the 10 parasites exercise can help with that.
I think it could be a powerful tool
Yeah.
for self-accountability. First of all, the act of writing down those tasks is a way of acknowledging them, of bringing them out of the shadows and into the light.
So it's like we're making a contract with ourselves.
Exactly. And then, as we start checking those tasks off our list, we're building that sense of self-efficacy, that belief in our ability to follow through. And that's a key ingredient in staying accountable to our larger goals.
It's almost like those tiny tasks are priming our brains for success. They're showing us that we are capable of taking action, of making progress, even when it comes to those things we've been avoiding.
You're hitting the nail on the head. And that's why I think the 10 parasites exercise can be such a valuable complement to those other 6 steps we've been discussing.
It's like the secret weapon in our discipline arsenal. I'm starting to see how powerful it can be, not just for getting those little things done, but for shifting our entire mindset around discipline.
Exactly. And I think that mindset shift is what ultimately makes the difference between fleeting motivation and lasting change. It's about moving from a place of I have to a place of I choose to.
I love that, because when we choose to embrace discipline, we're choosing to empower ourselves. We're choosing to take control of our lives and create the future we want.
Beautifully said. And I think that's such an important message for our listener who's on this journey of becoming more disciplined.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the practical strategies, but I want to shift gears for a moment and talk about something that the article doesn't explicitly address, the emotional side of discipline. Because, let's be honest, it's not always easy. There are going to be times when we feel frustrated.
Absolutely. Discouraged, maybe even tempted to give up.
So how can we navigate those emotional challenges? What advice would you give to someone who's struggling to stay motivated?
First and foremost, I'd say be kind to yourself.
Okay.
Remember that setbacks are a normal part of the process. It's like learning to ride a bike. You're going to fall a few times before you find your balance.
So it's not about avoiding those falls. It's about how we pick ourselves back up.
Exactly. And that's where self-compassion comes in. Instead of beating yourself up for slipping up, treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a friend.
I think that's such an important point. We tend to be so much harder on ourselves.
It's true than we would ever be on anyone else. And that negative self-talk can really sabotage our efforts. So the next time you find yourself feeling discouraged, try reframing your thoughts.
Okay.
Instead of saying, I'm so bad at this, try saying, okay, this is a challenge, but I'm learning, and I'll keep trying.
So it's about shifting our inner dialogue from a critic to a cheerleader.
Yes. Remember, you are your own best advocate. Cheer yourself on. Celebrate your progress. And don't be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
And I think that's where the power of community comes in. Surrounding yourself with people.
Absolutely. Who support your goals.
Yeah.
And believe in you can make a huge difference. Whether it's a friend, a family member, a mentor, or even an online group. Having that network of support can provide encouragement, accountability, and a sense of belonging.
It's like having a team of cheerleaders on the sidelines, rooting for you every step of the way.
I love that visual. And it reminds me of something we talked about earlier. The idea of discipline as a journey, not a destination.
Right.
It's not about reaching some arbitrary endpoint. It's about the growth, the self-discovery, and the resilience we cultivate along the way.
I'm thinking about our listener right now, and I want to make sure we give them some tangible takeaways they can apply today if they're feeling overwhelmed or stuck. Where should they start?
I would say pick 1 or 2 of these steps that resonate with you and start there.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be everything at once. Maybe it's creating a simple morning routine or tackling that 10 parasites list or identifying one small area where you want to improve your self-control.
So it's about choosing one small battle to win and building from there.
Exactly. Remember, even small changes can have a ripple effect, creating momentum and setting you up for bigger successes down the line.
And I think it's important to celebrate those small wins along the way.
Absolutely. Each step forward, no matter how small, is worth acknowledging and appreciating. Discipline is not about deprivation or punishment. It's about empowerment and growth. And every step we take in that direction is a victory worth celebrating.
This conversation has given me so much to think about, and I know our listener is feeling the same way.
I hope so. And I think we've laid a really solid foundation for exploring the deeper implications of these 7 steps and how they can transform not just our habits, but our entire approach to life.
As we've been talking about discipline and these 7 steps, I've been thinking about how it all ties back to something you mentioned earlier.
Oh, yeah.
That idea of discipline being about empowerment.
It's such a key point. When we view discipline as a tool for achieving our goals, for creating the life we want, it becomes less about restriction and more about possibility.
It's almost like discipline gives us the freedom to choose our own adventure.
I love that analogy. It's about taking ownership of our choices, our actions, and ultimately, our destiny. It's not about being perfect or never making mistakes. It's about having the self-awareness and the tools to course correct when we do.
And that brings us back to that question we posed earlier. How do we define success? Is it just about checking off boxes and reaching those external goals? Or is it something more?
I think true success lies in the transformation. That happens within us along the way.
Okay.
It's about the resilience we build, the lessons we learn, and the growth we experience as we navigate the challenges and triumphs of pursuing our goals.
So it's not just about the destination, it's about who we become on the journey.
Exactly, and that's what makes discipline so powerful. It's not just a set of rules or techniques. It's a pathway to self-discovery and personal mastery.
And I think that's a really empowering message for our listener. It's not about comparing ourselves to others or striving for some arbitrary standard of perfection. It's about embracing our own unique journey and using discipline as a tool to create the life we want.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And I think the beauty of these 7 steps, especially when paired with that 10 parasites exercise, is that they provide a framework for doing just that.
Okay, so before we wrap up, I want to come back to something that has been weaving its way through this entire conversation.
Okay.
The idea of mindset. Because it seems like that's the real key to unlocking the power of discipline.
Absolutely. Our mindset shapes our beliefs, our actions, and ultimately our results. And when it comes to discipline, one of the most important mindset shifts we can make is moving from a place of I have to a place of I choose to.
Can you elaborate on that a bit? What does that shift look like in practice?
Let's say your goal is to exercise more regularly. If you approach it from an I have to mindset, it feels like a chore, an obligation. But if you shift to an I choose to mindset, it becomes an act of self-care, a way to invest in your health and well-being.
So it's about reframing the story we tell ourselves.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective can make all the difference in our motivation and our ability to stick with it.
It's like we're reclaiming our power by choosing to align our actions with our values and our goals.
I love that. And I think that sense of empowerment is what ultimately makes discipline sustainable and fulfilling. It's not about forcing ourselves to do things we hate. It's about consciously choosing the actions that move us closer to the life we want to create.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into discipline. A huge thank you to you for your incredible insights and for helping us unpack this topic in such a meaningful way.
It's been a pleasure diving in with you.
And to you, dear listener, thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope you found this deep dive helpful and inspiring. Remember, discipline is not a destination. It's a path, a process, and a lifelong adventure. So be patient with yourself, celebrate your progress, and keep exploring what works best for you. Until next time, happy diving.